Welcome back to the final episode in the Principles of Drum Set series. In this video, we're going to dive really deep into the application etude and dissect it bar by bar, talking about how everything applies to what we learned throughout the series. Then, to top it off, you and I are going to play the application etude together. Let's get started. All right, so to start off, let's look at the first bar in the application etude. This is a really common type of fill used to build a lot of energy in a song. Whenever we're playing a fill like this, there's a couple things we want to consider. The first is, whenever we're playing multiple drums at the same time or in unison, we want to make sure we're hitting the drums at the exact same time. So, not like this. Notice that I was hitting the floor tom just slightly before the snare drum. And that can give a kind of cool, crunchy type of sound that can be useful in some situations. But whenever you're intending to hit multiple drums at the same time, make sure we're hitting them at the exact same time, like this. Same thing goes for when we add the kick drum in. This is the type of sound we want. It just adds a little bit of oomph on those quarter notes, but we don't want this. It seems a little sloppy, right? It's because the kick drum was slightly out of time compared to our hands. The next thing we want to consider when playing a fill like this is our starting volume, our starting dynamic. So we want to start really quietly so that by the end of the bar, we can build to a really, really loud volume or dynamic and build a lot of energy. If we start the bar too loudly, then we're already pretty loud and we don't have much to go from there. So if we start too loud like this, there's really not much we can do after that. It's pretty loud. It's already pretty bombastic. But if we start quieter, then we can build the energy throughout the bar a lot better. The last thing I want to talk about is what's on the fourth beat, which is a flam. Now, you can go over to the Making Space in Music concert snare drum part of the website and learn more about rudiments, including the flam. But let's go over it real quick. So a flam is that crunchy type of rhythm where you're playing kind of like we were playing before with both hands at the same time, except they're slightly displaced. So if you want to play a right flam, your right hand is going to be a little bit higher than your left, and by a little bit, kind of a lot. So your left hand is playing what's called a grace note, a quieter note. And this is going to be a right flam. If you want to play a left flam, the primary note is going to be your left hand, and the grace note is going to be your right hand. So that's what a flam is. And it's really important that we get that really nice and powerful on beat 4 to build the energy leading into the next downbeat of the next bar. So here's the full fill in context. We'll do that one more time, and this time, play it with me. And 1 and 2, and ready, go, and... Before moving on to talk about the second bar in the application etude, let's look at the thick double-dotted bar line just before the second bar. This is called an open repeat sign, and what it means is, as we play throughout this phrase and reach bar 9, you'll see another repeat sign just facing the opposite direction. This is called a closed repeat sign. Once you reach that closed repeat sign, you're going to go back to the open repeat sign and play that entire phrase again. However, it's important to look at the first ending and second ending as well. The first ending is that bar with the 1 and the bracket over it. And the second ending is the bar with the 2 and the bracket. The first time we play through that phrase, we're going to play the first ending. So play that bar with the written out fill that we learned in the previous episode. Then you repeat back to the open repeat sign and play through that entire phrase again. Except this time, instead of playing the bar with the 1 and bracket, we're going to play the bar with the improv slashes, or the bar with the 2 and the bracket over it. So that's a basic understanding of how repeat signs and first and second endings work. Now let's move on to the second bar in the application etude. This is a really common rock groove used in a bunch of different songs you can hear on the radio or in some of your favorite playlists. So on beat 1, we have a crash cymbal and a kick drum. Just as a reminder, most of the time, whenever you play a crash cymbal, you're going to want to add that kick drum to make sure it has some body and energy behind the crash. So from there, we're going to move our right hand down to the hi-hat if we're playing conventionally, or if we're playing open-handed, we're going to play these eighth notes with our left hand. But then it's just going to play eighth notes throughout the rest of the bar. Our left hand, if we're playing conventionally, or our right hand if we're playing open-handed, is going to play a backbeat on the snare drum on beats 2 and 4. And we're going to add another kick drum on the downbeat of 3 just to fill out the rest of the groove. So altogether, it sounds like this. 1 and 2 and ready, go. And... So if at first you're trying to play this and it seems kind of hard to play everything all together, that's totally fine. We can take out specific parts of the groove to make it a little easier and build some independence. So let's take out the snare drum. So if we're playing conventionally, we're just going to be using our right hand and our kick drum. 1 and 2 and ready, go. And... And you can repeat that as much as you want until you feel comfortable with just your right foot and your right hand. Then we can take out the right foot and just play with our hands. So something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... The last combination we could do is just do our right foot and our left hand and take out the right hand. 1 and 2 and ready, go. And... When we add all these 3 together, then we can get the entire groove and slowly build it up from there. 1 and 2 and ready, go. And... Now, the third bar. The third bar is really similar to the second bar in that we keep the backbeat on beats 2 and 4 on the snare drum, and we keep our ride hand, whether that be your right hand or your left hand, on the hi-hat playing eighth notes the entire time. The only thing that changes is the bass drum, which instead of playing on the downbeat of 1 and the downbeat of 3 like in the second bar, it's going to play on the downbeat of 1, the and of 2, and the and of 3. So it'll sound something like this. 1 and 2 and ready, go. And... If at first you can't play that because of your bass drum feeling a little wonky with your hands, that's totally okay. Go back to our gridding episode earlier in the series where we talk about a simple exercise we can do to move the bass drum 1/8 note to the right every time we repeat a basic bar of groove. Something like this. 1 and 2 and ready, go. And 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 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 and 3 and 4 and... With that exercise, you're going to get more comfortable moving the bass drum to whatever eighth note you want along that eighth note grid in the bar. Then it'll be a lot easier to play this where we have the bass drum on the downbeat of 1, the upbeat of 2, and the upbeat of 3. Looking to the next bar, it's going to be the same exact thing as the second bar. So next, we'll talk about the fifth bar. The fifth bar has 2 main things we can talk about. The first of which is the bass drum, which, much like the third bar, differs from the normal rock groove we have in bars 2 and 4. So rather than playing on the downbeat of 1 and the downbeat of 3, like in bars 2 and 4, the kick drum is going to play on the upbeat of 1 and the upbeat of 3, or the end of 1 and the end of 3. The second thing we can talk about is that the fifth bar is the halfway point between the open repeat sign and the closed repeat sign. So to give us some more momentum for the second half of this phrase, we can add a small fill at the end of this bar leading into the sixth bar. And this fill is just going to be one of those types of fills that doesn't want to distract from the backbeat. So we're going to play the backbeat as normal, and then on the end of 4, just after the backbeat, we're going to play another snare drum hit with an open hi-hat. So the entire bar will sound something like this. 1 and 2 and ready, go. And bars 6, 7, and 8 are almost completely identical to bars 2, 3, and 4. Except that rather than playing a crash cymbal on the downbeat of 1, like we do in bar 2, bar 6 starts with a closed hi-hat. Notice the plus just above the hi-hat in the music. Other than that, they're completely identical. Then we get to bar 9, which is the first ending, like we talked about earlier. This contains our written out fill in the application etude. If you want a detailed description of this fill and how to approach it easily, go back to our fills episode in this series where we talk about a process you can use to take written out fills and apply them to the drum set in a methodical way. Other than that, here's what bar 6, 7, 8, and 9 sound like. At the end of the 9th bar, we see the closed repeat sign, telling us to go back to the open repeat sign in the beginning of bar 2. Then we play that entire phrase over again. Except when we get to the first ending this second time, we're going to skip the first ending and go directly to the second ending. The second ending shows us improv slashes and the word fill, meaning we get to completely improvise and make up our own fill leading into the crash on the downbeat of 1 in the last bar. Improvising at first can be kind of daunting, so if you want a nice process you can use to help with your creativity on the drum kit, go back to our fills episode where we talk more about slashes and how to improve your creativity and improvising on the drum kit. Now, there's nothing left to do but play the application etude together. We're going to play it twice through. The first time is going to be under tempo at 80 beats per minute, and the second time is going to be at tempo at 95 beats per minute. One quick last thing. Each time we get to the second ending, I'm going to lay out and let you be creative with your improvised fill. That being said, let's try it out. And 1, and 2, and 1, and 2, and ready, go. And that's going to do it for the Principles of Drum Set series. I hope you enjoyed learning about the basics of this instrument and how to apply those lessons to the application etude. Feel free to check out the rest of Making Space in Music. Once again, I'm Nate Gittleman. I hope you have a great rest of your day and stay safe.